Good afternoon. I hope you had a nice lunch. This is workshop 8 of EuroDiG. It is a workshop that's focused on artificial intelligence, ethics, and the future of work. So if you look at the components in the workshop title, each one can be very broad and extremely complex. This workshop will focus on the interaction, specifically the impact of artificial intelligence on the future of jobs or the future of work, and the ethical dimensions. What I'm going to do right now is to explain the flow of the workshop, introduce the role players, and also highlight the key questions that we would like to pose to get your feedback on. Okay, so we've divided the workshop into 2 parts. The first part is context setting. You will hear from Vint Cerf. He is the world's leading internet pioneer. He will speak on ethics and algorithms. And then you will hear from, the photographer is distracting me. You will hear from Olivier Branger, who's from the European Commission. He's the head of the Next Generation Internet Unit. And he's going to talk about the European AI strategy, which just came about. How many people have read it? 1, 2, 3. Okay, a good time to promote it, actually. Olivier, yes? And in the strategy itself, he will talk about the strategy, the impact on the future of work, and the ethical consideration. And then we will go to Claudio Lucena. He was professor of law in Brazil. He's now a research fellow at the Center for the Future of Law in Portugal. And after that, I'm going to come to you for a discussion. In the discussion, and I'm going to tell you the questions right now because I'd like you to think about it, is the ethical approach the right approach to deal with the opportunities and challenges posed by AI and its impact on the future of work? If it is the right approach, is it alone sufficient? What else does it need? And are there other alternatives, and what are the gaps? So these are the input that we would like to get from you from the discussion. And we'll have about 15 to 20 minutes of discussion, and if you have some questions, we can address that as well. After that, we'll move to the second part of the workshop, which will be moderated by my colleague Marit Palovirta from Internet Society, European Bureau. And there, we will have perspectives from stakeholders. We will hear from Annette Mühlberg. She's here via remote participation, and she will present a perspective from Workers' Union, and she is from Germany. After that, you will hear about the role of the state from Mariam Sharangia. There she is. She's from the Georgian Innovation and Technology Agency. And then we will go for the business perspective from Clara Sommier from Google, and then to Lina Rompainen from the Electronic Frontier Foundation, Finland. And she will give us the civil society perspective. And then we will go to Christian Jeffel, where are you? There, who will provide for us an academic perspective. So you'll get a well-rounded view, and then we'll come back to you, and Marit will pose the question on what is the role and responsibility of the state when it comes to AI and its impact on the future of work, and what is the responsibility of employers and employees, and that cuts across all kinds of organizations, from the public sector, the private sector, as well as civil society. Okay, and I'm going to introduce a few key people. This is Maria Kornietz. She's our timekeeper and very important to the role players and to the moderators because she's going to tell us how much time we have left for our allocated time, so please pay attention to her. We have the rapporteur, Sue Sonja Herring, who's right there. She's going to come up at the end and do a summary on what she thinks could be the consensus of the room on the questions that will have been posed. And also I have a remote moderator, João Pedro, who's over there, and who will channel the people who's participating online. Do we have people online? We have 1, so hopefully more will come in. Okay, so let's start with a video from Vint Cerf on ethics and algorithm. Bacio?
Hello, my name is Vint Cerf. I'm Google's chief internet evangelist and sometimes known as one of the fathers of the internet. I've been given a list of pretty interesting questions about artificial intelligence and ethics. Let me just read them to you so you'll get an idea of what's before us in this discussion. What are the ethical and rights considerations in relation to AI and the future of work? What is the responsibility of the state, and what are the state's ethical considerations? What are the ethical considerations for employers as they deploy AI in work and in production processes? Are there ethical considerations that apply to workers themselves as they work with AI? Should robots and algorithms be given legal personality to address liability and taxation issues? And finally, what are the rights considerations in all of this? Wow, that's quite a list of questions, and I suspect in a short video like this I will not succeed in trying to get to all of them. Let me take one of them that particularly worried me, and that's the idea of creating false personalities, sort of like corporations being treated as people. I think that's very premature at this point. For all practical purposes, computer programs are not people, robots are not people, algorithms are not people, and I don't think we should treat them that way. However, those algorithms are used by people, and we can speak about the ethics of using those algorithms and using those programs in the conduct of business, or perhaps just in the conduct of everyday life. So let's look at this from the tool point of view. Let's ask ourselves, what should we be thinking when we apply these artificial intelligence or machine learning algorithms to accomplish a task? How much autonomy do we want to give to that software when it produces a result? Should we let the software make decisions alone without human intervention? For example, should this prisoner be allowed to obtain parole? Should this person be allowed to get a mortgage or a loan? Should this person be allowed to enter college? There are a whole series of questions like this that sometimes are addressed by gathering a great deal of statistical data and trying to boil that down into some kind of a predictive algorithm, possibly a machine learning algorithm, that will produce an outcome that will guide our decisions. What I think is unethical is to use these mechanisms solely and alone to reach conclusions. I think machines are very powerful, I mean by this software that drives them, helping us to analyze data to look at outcomes and conditions over perhaps a period of time to try to understand what we can see statistically. But I think when we're making decisions about people and their lives, we have to remember that they aren't statistics, they're people. And we need to keep that in mind. I think anyone developing artificial intelligence algorithms has a moral responsibility to be thoughtful about the kind of information that's used to train the AI program or the machine learning multi-layer neural network, and to be very conscious of the potential for bias and error. We found that some of these algorithms are quite brittle. Sometimes they will work very well for 95% of the cases, and then in a few cases they'll make really, really bad decisions and come to wrong conclusions. We need to be thoughtful and sensitive to that possibility. We should always be asking ourselves, what is the rationale for accepting the output of a particular algorithm? Is there anything else that we can do in order to determine whether or not the proposed outcome is in fact accurate and appropriate? Judgment is an important element here. I don't believe that we can expect our computer algorithms to have the kind of human judgment based on experience, for example, and knowledge of human beings and their behavior. So in the long run, I believe that all of these tools have the potential to be very, very powerful in helping us marshal information to inform decisions. But I think it has to be done in an ethical context in which we take care to apply human judgment to important decisions that affect the lives of our fellow citizens on planet Earth. I'm sorry I can't join you for this conference. This is such a rich and important topic that deserves a great deal of attention. But I do hope perhaps that our paths will cross on the net.
So that was Vint, and we thank him very much for the message, which he did as a favor because I asked him to do it. And we're now going to hear from Olivier Branger. And what I heard from Vint just now was a call for an ethical code for developers of algorithms. Please.
Hello. Do you hear me? Yes. So I'm Olivier Branger from the European Commission. I would like to say a few words about the strategy that we have adopted in April this year. I would start by saying that, okay, today we are going to discuss the ethical issues, we are going to discuss the impact on jobs, but the starting point, I think, and this is the key idea of our strategy, is that artificial intelligence is going to bring huge benefits. So it's going to bring benefits in healthcare, safer diagnosis, help to surgeons, for example. It's going to bring benefits in transport. Today, 90% of accidents are due to human error. So autonomous vehicles are going to make our roads safer. It's going to bring benefits to anticipate cyber attacks, etc., etc., etc. So we should keep that in mind, and this is why in Europe we want to invest in artificial intelligence, we want to invest in the technologies, we want to invest in the capacities, high-performance computing, etc., which will support artificial intelligence. And we also want to make sure that the users will use artificial intelligence. So today, 99% of companies in Europe are SMEs. Only 1 out of 5 is highly digitized. So there is a real work to make sure that these companies use artificial intelligence to their benefit in every sector. So we are going to invest also in that, giving access to an artificial intelligence on-demand platform, to algorithm, data, etc. So that's for the investment part, and we are very, very ambitious. The second part is the impact on jobs, indeed. I would say I've looked through a few studies that my colleagues who are experts gave me. The jury is still out on the exact impact of artificial intelligence on the job market. I mean, some studies say it will have a huge impact. Basically, more than half of jobs can be replaced. Some studies say it's 10%. Some studies say the net effect is nil. But in any case, what is certain is that it will have an effect. So some jobs will be replaced, and every job are going to be transformed. So we need to equip our workforce with the right skills to manage this transition. And it goes from getting the basic digital skills. So today, 1/3 of Europeans do not have basic digital skills. That's a real issue. How can they deal with an artificial intelligent agent in the future? So we have to make sure that the education system gives them the basic skills. We have to make sure that we also have the engineers, the AI, deep learning specialists who will be able to develop these technologies. And we have to help people in the transition. If your job is changed because of artificial intelligence, your company, but above all the state, has a duty, I think, to help you manage the transition while it's happening. So that's the second aspect, and we are also, we will have a number of instruments to help do that, but of course a lot of it will be done by the member states themselves, who are responsible for education systems. Then the third aspect of the strategy, the third pillar, is about the ethical and regulatory aspects. So our view is that these developments, like any developments, if we speak about next generation internet, blockchain, etc., each should follow our values. We are not going to give up our values. We are not going to go for a race to the bottom. That's very clear. So we need to see how we can incorporate these values in the development of artificial intelligence. Luckily, we have already a very solid framework. We have GDPR. We have a solid cybersecurity framework. We have civil laws. Laws about product liability and safety. They are there, we can build on them. Some of them we will need to explain a bit more how they apply in a world where we are surrounded by artificial autonomous systems and Internet of Things. And we are doing that, for example, for the product safety, the product liability directive. And then there are novel issues. The issue that Vince raised, the issue of the level of human control. That's very important. At which point, yes, time is up, I'm going to wrap up. how to make sure that decisions are not made by autonomous systems on their own, how to make sure that important decisions are still made by humans, how to make sure that the decisions of artificial intelligence agents are explainable, they are transparent, because otherwise people, if they don't understand, they will never trust these systems. So we need to find a way to do that. This will involve research work. And then, of course, we will need to make sure that to avoid the bias, etc. So for that, we have set up an alliance, so multi-stakeholder approach, to advise us on these ethical aspects, and they will issue a report by the end of the year. And the very last point, we have signed a declaration with 26 member states, not us, have signed a declaration and engage together with us, with the European Union, in all these aspects. So in the investment, in managing the job market transition, in ethical aspect. And that's very important. We go together to address this big challenge.
Thank you. And as I understand it, the European AI strategy emphasizes both an ethical framework as well as a legal framework that complement each other.
We have a legal. Sorry, do you hear me? Yeah. We have a legal framework already. We will see if we need to complement or explain it. Then there might also be self-regulatory approaches. That we will see. And the report by this AI Alliance will be very important to inform our decisions.
Okay. Claudio, what's the solution?
Thank you very much, Rinalia. Do we have the Prezi over there, a presentation ready? Is anyone there? All right, thank you very much. So we have a couple of initiatives already in that sense. Back in the 50s, when the Dartmouth conference convened and coined the term artificial intelligence, there was not much of a policy fuss about it, partly because the idea was that it could be, most of the problems could be solved, as you see there, with a selected number of researchers over the period of summer. That time frame didn't go exactly as planned, and part of the fact might have been because back then they lacked the engines, the fuel, and the network of vehicles. Now, fast forward that to the second half of our decade, and now everything is there. We got everything. The engines are there. The fuel is here. And also, the network of vehicles is here. And yes, they're sensors, they're not things. That makes a difference. So when we're ready to scale things to our everyday life, how do we define the challenges? Well, Professor Urs Gasser from the Harvard Berkman Klein Institute has done a pretty good job in defining some of those challenges in a blog post when he opened the initiative, some of which I'm bringing here to you. One of them is by looking at AI not as a set of monolithic, undivisible techniques as if they could be streamlined through the whole plethora of human activities, but yet segment them. Another one is that law is an important instrument, but it's not the only one. We must use other governance tools. We might feel the need to recode the rule of law. This is something very interesting that he brings also. And one last thing from the blog post, there are others, is that responses might vary across sectors and jurisdictions. Two takes were coming from our project in the Foundation for Science and Technology in Portugal and ITS Rio, where I'm part now of the group on research and AI and inclusion, is that we have to take care and ensure that these training data sets have quality and integrity so that the benefits they can bring can be broader and also favor inclusion. What are the initiatives so far? Well, as you have heard, one of them is national strategies. That was the case with the White House. That was the case with the UK. The European Union also has, but it's a more complex environment because there was a strategy. Olivier has just talked about it. There are also legislative, more hard law efforts in that. And to bring you another example, Brazil, the jurisdiction of my origin, has also just launched an Internet of Things strategy national plan. The initiatives come in other forms too, in ethically aligned or ethically driven initiatives, which is the case, for example, of the Montreal Declaration and the initiative run by the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineering, ethically aligned design, a very good work in progress addressing ethic challenges. Right now, kind of 3 weeks ago, we had in Toronto, during the RightsCon, the launch of a new initiative, the Toronto Declaration, which focuses not in hard national law, neither in ethically only aligned design, but in human rights as the basis out of which we should look at the responsible development of artificial technologies. Some regulatory efforts are already being discussed, and FDA was the first one. Now in the United States, a couple of other models are in discussion: Federal Search, Robotics Commission, interagency cooperation of many kinds. From France, we take a development from 2016, Loi pour une République numérique, which implements a mechanism which is now also in Article 22 of the GDPR. I've been told by my French colleagues that there were not many developments then. I think we might have more once this mechanism is reflected also in the GDPR. So, to end, these technologies, they give us so much potential that at times we might be taken to imagine that they are looking at the future. Well, the training data sets that they use, that most models of neural networks use, they're data that already exist. So, in the end of the day, and the best option, what they're doing is looking at the past. We have to look at the future. This is a decision that we have to make. The World Bank says that we're doing, as a society and as mankind, we're doing very well in developing digital technologies, very well. And we're doing very bad in sharing the results of those developments. That shouldn't happen. We have good standards. We do have good standards. But this is the way we're moving. Artificial intelligence technologies and mechanisms have the potential, and I will leave here, have the potential to contribute to one of the greatest tools for inclusion and sharing of power and influence. It might be the best opportunity of mankind in that sense, but it also can drive us through the path of the worst concentration of power ever. This applies to any field, but also to the future of work. We should decide. It moves too fast. We can't think too much for too long. We have to decide, are we going for concentration or are we going for sharing? Thank you very much.
Thank you. So that was a lot of food of thought. You heard the call for responsible development and responsible use and responsible governance. You heard the impact on the future of work and the importance of the rule of law, the code of the law itself, but also the need for other governance tools, and that's where the ethical framework comes in, and that human beings need to make up its mind in terms of what kind of future and development that it wants. So now I come to you because we'd like to hear from you in terms of what you think. Yes, please. There's a microphone right behind you.
Okay, thank you. I'm Patrick Pennings from the Information Society Department of the Council of Europe. And in fact, the Council of Europe's Committee of Ministers just decided 2 weeks ago that artificial intelligence was to become one of the key features of the organization and in terms of research. I could start with saying technological development, as some say, will never be as slow again as it is today. Mm-hmm. So we have to count on a progression, rapid progression in certain areas. Now, artificial intelligence is already bringing its daily results to our lives. We may not know about it, but in quite a number of things like urban planning, traffic planning, and so on, there's already quite a bit of artificial intelligence involved. Is it sufficient to solely have ethical clearance of how we are going to make use of artificial intelligence? I don't think so. As a human rights-based organization, I think we need to look at human rights input from the start by design of algorithms, self-learning algorithms, self-learning machines, autonomous machines. I think we need to be clear on that. That is that if we want to create a legal space which is predictive, and we're already working on quite a number of things within the organization, for example, predictive legislation or predictive justice. All of this is already in place, so we need to make sure that we have a common legal framework in which the developments take place. I give an example of, for example, when we were discussing biomedical developments, it is not sufficient to have just ethical clearance. We also need to make, like in that case, the Oviedo Convention, which is an international treaty, which puts everyone on the same line. That doesn't mean that we don't have to rethink the rule of law and how we deal with it in different jurisdictions, but that's, I think, very clear that this needs to happen. Thank you.
So you started out your comment with about speed, and with the development of a treaty, that's going to take a few years. Do you think that we can tolerate that? Just a quick answer. Can we afford it?
Can we afford not to spend that time? That's the response to it. For example, within the Council of Europe, it took 6 months to develop a convention on lone terrorist fighters, the lone wolves. So is 6 months too much?
6 months is tolerable.
The question really is, what if we don't? And I think it's important that in order to set down the generic principles, of course you need to take time. I don't think that rushing into any kind of legislation without involvement of all the communities, I'm not only speaking about governments, but the technological community, the internet developers who are actually with their hands in the mold, so to say, they have to be involved in that, and that is quite clear. We cannot do it. Governments cannot do it on their own.
Okay. Other views? Yes, please. Please, there is a mic here, and I'll come to you.
Thanks. Actually, following up to this comment, I think it's very important that we make up our mind about artificial intelligence, but also it's important to find a way, again, to bring every country on the table on this, because what we're seeing today is like a race for each country to make use of artificial intelligence also as a comparative advantage against other countries. And the problem is that, to me, it looks very much like a prisoner dilemma, in which everybody seems to benefit from non-collaborative approach, but eventually by non-collaborating you end up in the worst possible outcome, which might be even devastating for humanity. So do you think that there is a way of bringing countries to collaborate and
So just hold on and don't answer yet, but note that it's for you. João. Yes.
Despite being a remote moderator, I'm really interested in
It's okay, remote moderators can also participate.
Yeah, so
just speak closer to the microphone.
It will be a personal question or a personal comment. I'd like to think, or I'd like to ask to the panel, so when we talk about these issues, and I'll speak as a researcher in artificial intelligence and also a student, that we sometimes software developers aren't really aware of these even of the legal issues, and the ethical ones are thought in a personal way, and sometimes there are no guidelines to these aspects. So my question is how to bring together those two points of view, because even, well, I've been to the EuroDiG program. We've been preparing the participation at EuroDiG from 2 days. And the discussion, we were going through artificial intelligence, and my question was, so should we put it in a technical or in a legal way? And the immediate answer was, why can't we combine both? So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there other views? Because I know that Claudio can handle multiple questions at one time. Yes, please. Is there a microphone on the other side?
Thank you, Dario Zivzivadze, RG Movement. Actually, I don't have a question, I have just a suggestion. Let's try to be more specific, because here what we try is to raise questions, to raise topics, but are there any answers, or we're just going to raise topics? Because honestly, I don't believe that the developer can be kind of you can't oblige a developer who are different-minded people to oblige to certain rules or maybe even ethical rules. I know what I'm talking about. I know I've been in touch with developers. I know exactly what ethics means, and I have respective education, and I really don't think that you can even bring all the countries to collaborate. Those who will not will win, and actually it will become a race. So I would suggest let's try to be more specific. Even let's define what you mean by AI, because mostly when I read and trying to understand what people assume under AI, it might not even be an AI. So let's just try to be more specific. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's an important input, but I just want to remind that we want the question answered. Is the ethical approach alone sufficient? If it's not sufficient, what more is needed? But of course, your input is taken. Claudio.
Thanks, Rinaldi. A clear-cut answer to that question. The ethical approach is a necessary component.
Necessary.
Absolutely.
Why?
We can't go without it.
Why?
It's because that's where we're trying to preserve our human nature in the loop of this new wave of technology. I really appreciate both questions from Pedro and from our fellow. That's interesting. The definition is very interesting. I think we're referring, I'm sorry to come back to a terminology thing, but I think it's essential to what I'm going to put afterwards. We call it we keep calling it artificial intelligence because of that decision from the 50s. There was no other expression to describe what they were thinking of at that time. I think we can have a different name for it now. We're talking about analytics over big data. That's what we're talking about. And when we do that, we eliminate most of the semantic existential issues of talking about something intelligent other than a human being. It's not that it's going to happen. There are those implications. There are huge funds and interesting studies about that part of substituting our human intelligence, semantically speaking, philosophically speaking. But that's not what we're trying here. We're dealing here with the everyday use of data processing over big quantities of data. I'm a lawyer, but I'm also a computer scientist. I have these two nationalities, so to say, and allow me to respect to the most, but disagree to the full extent of the premise you're bringing here. And that addresses also Pedro's question. Unfortunately, he's not here. We not only should, but we must place and divide that burden with developers too. I would strongly encourage you to read a recent work published by, I'm going to lack the name, and it's a terrible fault.
Give the title.
But the title of the work is The Moral Character of Cryptographic Work. This is a very interesting piece in which, in much more elaborate terms than what I'm doing here, because I also don't have a lot of time, there is a counterpoint to what you're placing here. There is no way we can advance this if we don't shift the burden of this development. The excuse, and I'm talking also as a computer scientist, the excuse, I'm just an engineer, does not work anymore. This is too serious. Engineers are educated enough to foresee the consequences of this work. We're looking at developments of an area from which the developers are all there. They all give their talks and speeches. Look at Jan LeCun, Geoffrey Hinton, and they're there, they give speech. Listen to them. They're clear in saying there are uses for which artificial intelligence is mature enough. There are other ones that it's not. Let's use what for natural language processing? Fair enough. Consequences are measurable. We're using it for predictive policing as a decision maker, not as assistant? Definitely not. So, I mean, not to give a definitive answer because we're not going to get there, but these are the reflections I would like to make.
Thank you. Christian, you wanted to jump in? Yes.
Yes. I think, if I may first comment to your question, I think it's a very, very important and relevant point.
Can you hear Christian? Okay, can you speak louder,
yes,
please?
It's a very important and relevant point to think about the international setup that we are dealing with, because in a way, we have this weapons race narrative that has been introduced, and I think it's very detrimental because other than, for example, nuclear technology, AI is not limited to energy and bombs. So it's a much more diverse and potent technology. And I think the work of the European Union in that regard, especially the declaration that included Norway, which is not a member of the European Union, is a very important step into an inclusive international or transnational setup in that regard. And the measures highlighted, this doesn't apply to work, but I think it will impact, are to link research institutions and to link hubs, innovation hubs, and to create a kind of network. And I think this could be really a first step in an even more inclusive way to offer a different narrative that fits very well with coal and steel. So this was my first remark, and if I may add a very brief second remark in defense of engineers, I completely agree that they have a big responsibility, but if we take the comment of the colleague and really look at the specific problem we are facing, those engineers, they work within an organization, they have specific tasks. They listen to the authority of others, and they deal with highly complex questions. Many of them are sensitive, but it takes a lot to speak up and to change the development, because they don't make ultimate decisions in many settings. So what we need is interdisciplinary teams. We cannot expect of them that they solve questions that the highest European courts quarrel about and argue about. We need interdisciplinary teams, and we need the involvement of the people for which those technology is made. So burden sharing is just necessary for the technology we're building here.
So you're saying engineers can take guidance? They can take guidance?
Of course. I mean, they can take guidance. Of course, they would need some level of education in order to, everybody who's worked in an interdisciplinary project knows this. It's like language translation, but if you have an interdisciplinary team, and I see this in my own work, it can be very, very productive, because once you start the conversation.
Olivier, are you an engineer?
I am an engineer.
Okay, please.
But I've been working for the last 10 years among lawyers. I manage them. No, I just wanted to intervene on these 2 points, the cooperation and the ethical aspects, where we should put the ethical dimension in the training, or if we should deal with it ex post. On the cooperation, I think, yes, there will always be a competitive dimension. We cannot avoid that. Countries have their own economic interest, they have their own industries to protect, they want to attract investment, so there is a competition dimension. But still, we are faced with the same issues. We are faced with the same issues in terms of the impact on jobs. We are faced with the same issues in terms of those ethical questions. Do we allow an algorithm to take medical decisions or not? So we have to work together, and I think we are going in that direction in Europe. I mean, to have 26 countries signing a declaration is important. And once we have that, we also have a certain weight when we discuss with our international partners. I mean, if Germany discusses alone with the United States, it's not that great. If Europe discusses as a whole with the United States, I think we can achieve better results. And then on the ethical aspects, I think, I mean, you can go the ex post way. You can go for legislative. And if I'm being a bit self-critical, look at the time it took us to do GDPR, and we are still in the implementation phase. Look at the time it takes to do a competition law case. It takes years and years. So, of course, we'll continue to do that when it is needed, but we have to intervene upstream. And I think an engineer can understand ethical issues. an engineer can be trained to that, and they would be interested in that, I'm sure. So we also have to put that in the curriculum of scientists and engineers, these aspects, and I fully agree also with the idea to have multidisciplinary teams. And if you look at the big tech success from the West Coast on the US, I mean, usually they work with different competencies.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have about 3 minutes. If you have burning contributions, I see 2 hands. We'll let the young lady go first.
Hello? Okay. So Christian has emphasized the role of interdisciplinary teams, and I really agree with that, and I would like to see in these interdisciplinary teams not only lawyers and engineers and philosophers, but I would really like to see also psychologists and social psychologists. I think there is an elephant in the room, namely the question of what kind of reality do we want to live in a sense, in what kind of conditions does a human being flourish? And we are discussing the future of work. So if I want to go to a shop, I want to talk to a real person, not with a machine. I want my car or a bus to be driven by a human being, not only because it's my preference, but there's a whole body of research, and it's also a common knowledge that we need human contact. And it doesn't matter if our roads will be safer and our reality will be safer and sterile, and we will live 100 years, but what kind of quality of life would it be if 70% of us will be depressed because we lack social contact? So I wanted to really bring up this perspective. So if one day there's an interdisciplinary team, I would really like to see
a more holistic one.
Yeah,
yes.
Psychologists there as well. And
thank you very much. It's a very important point. Social contact is like sunshine. Yes.
So we have 2 brief comments from Avri Doria. First one, why is an ethical component required? Better to answer, how can ethics be ignored in any human activity, even if we are using technology? And the other comment, engineers deal with trade-offs all the time. One of the things they need to include in their trade-off are ethical considerations.
Thank you. Avri participates in the Internet Engineering Task Force, and she deals with these issues, and she also deals with human rights issues as well. So you also had a comment, please come.
So hello, my name is André Melancia from Portugal, and I want to mention just 1 or 2 things. So maybe 100 years ago, people used to do a lot of work manually, and then machines came on over, yeah, and they started to do some of the work people used to do. And there was a change in society that people were being replaced by machines. It turned out it wasn't exactly like that. People were still indispensable. Nowadays we talk about AI, and it's exactly the same thing. People just assume that they're going to be dispensable and AI is going to take over the world. We have to think about machines as something that actually helps us as a society to be better in the future, to help us to make us not do a lot of, the work that we as a society shouldn't be doing. Machines could be doing that work. So let me just give you an example on how things can go wrong, because I'm a technical person and things can go wrong. So a few months ago there was an Uber car that drove automatically, and it actually killed someone. I'm not sure exactly the scenario, because it might have been the other person's fault that was driving the bicycle. We don't really know, but that situation actually occurred. So we have to be sure that when we automate these processes, that they are actually safe for humans. That depends on a lot of people. That depends on the engineers, that depends on politicians, that depends on everyone to actually make sure that there are rules in place to guarantee that that happens. However, you cannot be fully sure that that's going to be a problem until it actually happens. So if no one had died, and this is obviously a bad situation, but if no one had died in this situation, you might have 1,000 or 1,000,000 cars running automatically in the streets until someone actually died, and that would have been a much bigger problem. So it was actually better, in an unfortunate way, it's actually better that that happened now in a very early stage so that we could take measures into fixing that problem. Another issue that happened was maybe a few years ago. There was a Twitter bot that Microsoft came up with. I think it was called Tay, if I'm not mistaken. And that bot tried to learn from every tweet that everyone talked to it. So the problem is there was manipulation, and a lot of people actually ended up giving them racist comments. So the bot ended up being very racist and very, negative. But the thing is, that bot was a very good experience, because that bot actually learned what the human nature of the people were interacting with it actually did. So if that bot had a nuclear switch to kill half of the world, it would probably have killed half of the world, because it's understood that that was something that they should have done. So from the point of view of the engineers, there's also a need to have something like a kill switch to make sure that whatever happens with the bots, it does not go beyond what's reasonable for a bot, for an artificial intelligence.
Okay, kill switch. Thank you very much. So we need to move into the second part, which is the stakeholder perspective, and I'm going to hand over to Marit. And also for the role players, you heard some of the comments. Some of them also posed questions, which we didn't address. If you have a reaction to that, please factor that into your interventions. Marit.
Okay, hello everybody. So my name is Marit Palavirta from the Internet Society. And we had some comments about the multi-stakeholder aspect, the interdisciplinary aspect of artificial intelligence. And I'm happy to say that we have here a very multi-stakeholder panel representing workers, government, business, civil society, and academia. So I believe we have a video intervention by Annette Mühlberg. Hello, Annette. Can you hear us? Can you hear us, Annette? We can't hear you. I think you might be on mute. Can you hear? We would like to start with you, Annette, if you can get your sound working. Okay. It's not artificial intelligence, but we're still having issues. Okay, maybe what we can do is that we will start with Mariam in the meanwhile. And Annette, if you could, after Mariam's intervention, make a sign if your system is working. So Mariam represents the Georgian Innovation Agency. So please.
So hello everyone, I'm delighted to be here and to share our agency's perspective regarding AI. So it's a very controversial issue, and to start off, so what is artificial intelligence? It's not like scientific fiction, we're using it every day. I'm sure all of you have smartphones, all of you got an advice from a smartphone to go to the restaurant, to have a music that you may like, but still it's in the development stage. So it's like a perfect time for startups, for innovators to experiment on it, to come up with new ideas, so it's still in the development stage. However, at the same time, there are challenges that AI brings, and I would like to emphasize first the privacy. I'm sure you would guess this one. So you know that commercial side and politicians as well are using big data and profiting from it a lot. So this is one thing that we as a society are concerned of. The second thing is that employers and the skills may become obsolete, which means that some jobs may disappear, however, at the same time, some jobs may be created, which implies that this is a paradox of technology, I guess. So this third one, which I would say is more long-term, is moral perspective. Who would be responsible for the AI? Who holds the moral perspective and ethical consideration for that? So now let's underline the role of the government and as a state, what should we do to answer these challenges? So in terms of privacy, I would like to emphasize the general data protection regulations that you mentioned. And even though we're not part of EU yet, hopefully, I think that we'll be pretty open for that because we really respect people's privacy and I think it should be harmonized. So the role of the government in this stage is to have a very specific legal framework so we as a society know that our rights are saved and respected. On the other hand, about some jobs and skills becoming obsolete, what government can do and what our agency at this point is actually doing is we're providing free IT courses in order to prepare our society to have knowledge of programming languages and to be really ready for this technological breakthrough that is happening right now. At the same time, we have a new program called Innovation Agents actually, that go to SMEs, small and medium enterprises, and try to find the gaps, how they can be digitalized, where innovation can help to increase the effectiveness and efficiency of those firms. So we're really promoting the innovation and technology. At the same time, we're promoting the formation of the communities of artificial intelligence, machine learning communities, where also our main priority is investment in high-tech startups. So we're really encouraging artificial intelligence to develop and to be invested in. So these are really one of our main priorities. The role of the government, as far as I see, is to have enough initiatives in order to prepare the society, employees to be ready for the technological breakthrough. To ensure and to talk more on a strategic perspective and more on global perspective, education sector itself needs to be modernized in order for new generation to get the right information at the right time through the right medium, and medium is really important, I would like to emphasize. So in a nutshell, AI could act as an extension that could help humans to unleash their potential, and which will be better than any artificial intelligence on its own. In order for this to happen, adequate groundwork should exist, and appropriate legal and structural framework should be in place, along with the appropriate control mechanisms, which I think are really very important. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, very well. So government's role, education, awareness, very nice points there. Let's try and have Annette back on, if the link is still working. Annette, can you hear us now? I see you unmuted. We still can't hear you. Maybe we have a problem with the speakers here. Annette, could you try again? No, unfortunately it's not working. Sorry about that technical glitch. In the meanwhile, we're going to move on with the panel so that we're not going to run out of time. So next, Clara Sommier from Google. How about the business perspective?
Thank you very much. So yes, I'm going to share with you briefly how we see AI and ethics relating at Google, and how we are talking and thinking about the impact of the future of work and how it relates back to ethics. So of course, it has been said, AI and machine learning has an incredible potential, because AI, as we see it, is a way of making sense of a messy world. Through machine learning, we can see patterns of data that are harder to see and find more efficient solutions for our societies. But that being said, we need to be very thoughtful, as has just been said and discussed before, about the impact it can have on everybody's life. And this is something that we're really trying to consider very thoughtfully. We're trying to see if there can be a broad set of principles that can be integrated when we're looking at AI. And we're already doing so. The way we are doing that is that our engineers that are developing AI are going through training on fairness to make sure that it's something that they consider. We're also trying to see if there are ways to analyze the data sets that they're using to develop the machine learning to make sure that there are no bias in those data sets. Because we shouldn't forget that AI is made by humans, so there's a way of training them and making sure that it's done in a proper way. And if you want to find more information about all those ongoing efforts that we're doing, I invite you to go on our website of the PAIR initiative. It's People and AI Research Project, where we try to put back the human at the center of AI. And we hope to have more resources and research coming up soon to back that up. Then switching to the future of work, very important topic. It has been said, it is very uncertain what will happen. Probably some jobs will change, as it had already done in the past. We don't expect one category of job to fully disappear. Maybe some redundant tasks will, but we see it also as a potential, as it has been mentioned by the audience as well. We know there are millions of people who hate their job, and rightly so. And maybe there's a way for us as well to improve that. And through AI, maybe there will be also future jobs that will appear. there was a very interesting study by the Center for the Future of Work trying to identify what could be the next 20 jobs that we are not thinking of. One of them will be a human and machine team manager. Maybe we will need someone, a human being, to be able to coordinate the work of the machine with the work of the humans that will still complete the job. And it sounds silly now, but 20 years ago, I wouldn't have thought that there could be a job such as creating filter for pictures to add cat ears or angel wings to someone that actually that would be a job. So we don't know what the future will bring. That being said, and coming back to ethics, a very important point if we want to ensure this transition is to make sure that it will be inclusive and that everybody, as it was mentioned by the Commission, rightly so, that nobody will be left behind by this. And this is something where we're trying also to work on. How do we do that? We are trying to invest in digital skills because we know that those jobs will require different skills. We've already trained 5 million persons in the past 4 years in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And we've committed to help 1 million Europeans find employment or grow their business by 2020. That being said, I also want to stress one point. When we're talking about the skills that we'll need for the job of the future, we shouldn't underestimate the human dimension of it. And we know that creativity, empathy will still be a big part of what we'll need. There are even a study by McKinsey that evaluate that half of the job would require those skills, whereas now it's around 37%. So there will still be a big role to play for humans. And the last part that I wanted to mention when we're talking about skills and how to prepare for this future to make sure that nobody will be left behind is the reform of the education system, and that has been mentioned. And it's actually also a topic that Vint Cerf has been working on, and as he's saying it as well, we are now in a situation where we are learning and then working, and we'll probably be moving to a more continuous learning. Probably your life will look more like learn, work, and repeat. And this is something we should be ready for if we want everybody to have a change. I'll finish on a positive, more positive note. AI will be disruptive, we'll know it, but AI can help to solve big problems. That's what AI is good for, and maybe that's where it can help us as well. AI may be part of the solution to address better the future of work.
Thank you, Clara. So I'm hearing quite opportunistic tone, but with some reservations that we need to again look at the bigger picture, digital skills, and also to find ways to inject the human contact and have the human contact in the artificial intelligence picture. Next, I would suggest that we leave Annette till the end. We'll try once again in the end if she can make her intervention, but in the meanwhile I would like to invite Lena from the Electronic Frontier Foundation, please.
Hello everyone, I am Len Rampainen from Electronic Frontier Finland. It's really our own fault for grabbing the name from the Electronic Frontier Foundation, because now we always need to clarify that it's Electronic Frontier Finland, not the foundation. But yes, predicting things is very hard, especially predicting the future. Preparing for this talk also made me realize that I'm most certainly not even aware how much algorithmic decision making is already affecting our world and how rapid progress we are making in the field of AI and robotics. We already have robots guiding robots in factories, self-driving cars are going through testing, and humans being humans, we of course have sex bots and an awful lot of decisions affected in the world. One thing I am, however, is I'm an avid fan of science fiction, so these topics of course take me to the science fiction route. There we have lots of different directions the world can go. Maybe our techie community can come up with a version of Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. A robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being come to harm. A robot must obey the orders given it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second laws. In some science fiction, there are benevolent robots or AIs that become almost godlike behind-the-scenes actors, allowing humans to retain the illusion of self-control, while AIs secretly guiding us towards a better future behind the scenes. And of course, there are also various dystopias where AIs or robots get out of control, threatening human survival. Pretty much all of us probably know at least the Terminator movies. They definitely would have needed that kill switch. AIs will not be perfect. Put in wrong data and you will get wrong answers. Or, as it's put very succinctly, garbage in, garbage out. For using algorithms and AI to strengthen human rights, I call your attention upon the Toronto Declaration mentioned earlier, which was announced at the RightsCon a few weeks ago. And then I ask all of you to think about your works. How many of you have some elements in your work that could be fairly easily replaced by AI or robots? What would that mean for your work? I work in internal IT, and there are quite a few things where AI would be useful, and we are already to some extent looking at ways to improve our work by taking the repetitive tasks, the simple tasks away. But what this means is that if we get rid of some easy and repetitive work, that leaves the hard stuff for us. And at least for me, I have realized that I cannot work very effectively if I need to do a full day with a brain churning all the way with 100% efficiency. The body does not take it. So the real question becomes, to what extent will AI and robots replace humans or allow us to focus on the more pleasant aspects of our lives, or maybe even work less? Or will we have judge dread like mass employment leading to endless boredom and police state keeping the citizens tightly controlled? Can we lead meaningful, pleasant lives? I'm not really providing any answers here, since pondering these questions just made me ask more questions, but perhaps together we can come up with some answers. And we must also remember that whatever comes, there will be a lot of unintended consequences and unexpected consequences which we do not manage to think about with the developments in AI and robotics.
Thank you, Lena. And sorry about the Finland. I'm from Finland. I should have known better, but okay. And then we have Christian. You already gave some comments earlier, but please. So your views, Christian Jeffal.
Thank you so much. My name is Christian Jeffal from Humboldt Institute of Internet and Society. I can already refer to many things that have been mentioned already, like by the gentleman from Portugal. This is also a key point for me. It's a Disneyland at the moment for scientists and academics, because we're thinking so much about the future and trying to understand. And I think you raised a very important point in saying that during industrialization we had a lot of assumptions about the future of work that proved to be exactly the opposite. And so my point would be to keep that in mind, to think about what will happen in 20 years, but also to think about what is happening now. And I can tell you from my research work that actually things are changing, and changes happen now, and we need to address them. I was very happy that Jason Furman, who used to be the chief economist for former President Obama, said kind of the same thing at a conference at the MIT. We really need to address some of the things we see now. From an academic perspective, I think we need to talk about social justice, because we have a lot of efficiency gains and increased efficiencies. This poses problems of the distribution of wealth, which we need to focus on. The robo tax was one idea, but maybe not the only way, and might not solve all problems. Concrete examples from my work, the things I look at. If you look at the gig economy and platforms that use single workers, you can see a strategy, especially by certain medium and middle-sized companies, to train their algorithm in very less developed countries with not much regulation, and the people are used to train these algorithms, and then they don't participate in the economic benefits of the training. And I think this is a huge problem. The International Labour Organization just starts to see this problem, but these kind of problems we have to look at. I talk to people who are laid off. I also talk to people, and this is maybe also underestimated if we talk about the workforce, the downscaling. Because if AI takes certain components of my job, maybe I get paid less. And this is what's happening in the German administration, or has happened in the German administration right now. So I get paid less, and I think these are the side effects that we really need to focus on. So, in conclusion, I think it's very important to think about how we address those issues. And the first step, it has already been mentioned from people on the panel, the first step that is really important is to speak openly about it, and to, I think also from my side, it's important to stress the opportunities AI offers, but as the organizations on the panel, we really need to keep an eye on what is happening, especially to the workforce in that regard. And I salute the strategy of the Commission in the communication, because it was for me the first document that really in a detailed fashion explained it, defined it as a problem, and didn't try to solve it all at once, but looked at it as a problem. As the psychologist downstairs over there said, I think we need many perspectives on this, many insights, and need to keep looking at it. But one thing I would like to stress is not to put a single narrative on that, and not to conceive AI simply as a job killer. I could imagine, and you mentioned that, many things, especially for the well-being of workers or for workers' rights, where we could actively use AI in order to make life better, and we could do it now. So keep an eye on 20 years, but in a way develop an idea of AI that fits our purposes and that doesn't, as a narrative, create automated victims to this development, which is actually what happened with coal and steel in the European Union. It was reframed, it was taken as a proxy to work together, and if we can manage to take a step in this direction, I think this would be really great. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. I've been now told that we have
Annette.
We have Annette by video.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Annette. Apparently, you have a video. Would you like to play it, perhaps?
Yes, of course.
Very good. We see your video now. Thank you.
To this workshop. I hope I can contribute some ideas to your discussion from a workers' and trade unions perspective. My name is Annette Mühlberg. I'm the head of the project group on digitalization at Verdi, the United Services Union based in Berlin. So, when we look at artificial intelligence, there is definitely great potential, like getting rid of dangerous, physically straining and boring jobs, and making convenient services available for everybody, as well as contributing to the common good. We like to use technology to empower us and avoid mistakes. But there are also some challenges for democracy and the working world, especially if we want to fulfill the following values and guiding principles. I assume all of us, as citizens and workers, want to live freely, independently, and with dignity. Nobody should check their basic rights at the door of their workplace, be it in a corporate, freelance, or online work environment. We want to be treated fairly as individuals and never as a dull collective. A clannish contradicts our morals and our hard-won democratic structures. If accused of bad work or even a crime, we want explanation and proof. We have a right to object, complain, and if necessary to sue if we feel that we're being treated unfairly. in doubt for the defendant and innocent until proven guilty are very important principles of our society. To sum it up, how we live and work should be our decision and not a matter of scoring. If we were to accept that a black box instructs us and becomes the norm for our behavior, our decision-making and control mechanisms, that would turn us into servants of a false deity. We'd much rather be free citizens and self-determined employees. This includes in those cases where AI becomes part of fundamental services of society, the data sets and algorithms used must be accountable, verifiable, comprehensible, revisable. Informational self-determination is a basic right. Data records must not be personalizable. Data generated through machine learning are usually not just machine data, but also data of the employees who operate them. Especially in times of the online working world, the protection of employee data is of great importance. The GDPR must therefore be supplemented by an employee data protection law. Many countries have already specific legal regulations for the world of work. In Germany, these include co-determination rights that take effect as soon as a technology is to be introduced that can be used to monitor performance and behavior. In order to ensure that the technology is still co-determinable, we also need the transparency, respectively traceability, of the algorithms at work. The digital transformation of the working world partly changes and replaces areas of work with technology. Here, a forward-looking personnel planning is necessary, as well as new forms of further education and qualification. And of course, skills already required should not be lost through the use of AI. We need these human qualifications for management and control, and also as a backup if technology fails. And another thing, there are already good examples in collective bargaining agreements, how rationalization gains can benefit the employees, for example, by the reduction of the working time. For society as a whole, it is especially important that large companies also pay their share of taxes so that the state is in a position to provide services of general interest and support people in need. Not only privacy and co-determinability by design, but also tax by design has to be part of the programmer's specifications. Legal liability should also provide an incentive to the producer to ensure that the risks are minimized. This would not be the case if the machine were assigned a legal personality. An employee should certainly not be taken hostage for unresolved liability problems, according to the motto, oh, the autonomously driving truck gets a driver, so that if something goes wrong, it's the driver who is liable. New forms of work, like those offered through online platforms, must not lead to wage and social dumping. Occupational safety and labor law must continue to apply. Employers cannot be allowed to deny responsibility by pointing to only serving an intermediary role. Anyone like Uber, who has the power to distribute jobs and ban employees from a platform, has to have the legal responsibilities of an employer. A system of permanent probation and possible arbitrary treatment quickly leads to burnout and mental illness. Continuous automated control is no good. What we want is a creative, dedicated, self-determined and social partnership-based work. Let me close in the spirit of Kant. Let us not fall into self-imposed immaturity, but use artificial intelligence for the empowerment of workers and citizens and their well-being. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. And if we could keep Annette on the wall live, in case there are questions in the room for her. Thank you very much for your words. I heard very interesting things there that we probably didn't hear before. So things like safety, liability, also privacy, which was mentioned before, that are key aspects that also touch on the ethics and the future work issues. I would now like to turn the discussion to the audience for questions, please.
It's not really a question as much as a comment, and more like precise issue that I would like to raise with respect to privacy and artificial intelligence is like if a machine learns a data about me that I didn't know myself, who does that data belong to? Or how we control that? This is something like probably like very precise that bothers me. So to elaborate more, like if I'm willing to tell Netflix the movies that I like, but maybe I'm not really sure what my movie taste is. So if Netflix starts knowing my movie taste better than me, like how do we control that?
Very good. Any other questions? We take a few in the, please.
Hi, this is Veronica from Digital Citizens Romania, a think tank concerned with these issues. The thing is, I'm a little bit afraid when we have this discussion because we also get in a little bit of paranoia. And this, I mean, I know it's not new, you already said it, but these are the news that make the headlines. And this is the thing I'm concerned, the way we communicate about new technologies. And going back to the question, if it is one very important use of talking about AI ethics, it's about the process, gaining trust, and highlighting that part because it's more than skills. Yeah, we don't have skills, and we cannot wait to reform the educational system. That will take decades. It's about acting now and acting that with a multi-stakeholder approach and with all the other social partners as well. So the point is, how can we avoid this? How can we make sure that this will not stop investments and research? Because related to this, a couple of weeks ago, it was the news that in Germany, a personal assistant was banned because it was offered for young people, for children actually, but they were also recording everything that was happening. It was also connected to the online platforms. So all these are so new things, but we start to ban them because we don't understand them as well.
Yes. So we have two aspects here. One related to building on one's personal data and that potentially ending up in the kind of AI ecosystem. We had building trust. So how can we work with that? And let's take a third one there, and then I'll turn it back to our speakers.
Yeah, I think it's actually very reasonable to also consider the fact that you might want to create restrictions on this if we cannot control it. So I think it's also very reasonable not to think only that, of course, we want to go into innovation and into all of this, but I think Europe actually is the only actor today that might bring this responsibility part of into the discussion, and it's something that not many countries are looking at. And also, actually, my question is about GDPR and right to explanation. Do you think that the fact that there are a few articles in GDPR that have been considered to be creating a right to explanation of a certain automatic decision by a machine is going to prevent the application of deep learning, especially in Europe, or not?
Very good. So let's turn it back. So we have the kind of GDPR AI-related question here. If there's a contradiction there, and also then how do we build trust by perhaps adding transparency and other things? Olivier, would you like to comment?
Yes, I guess it's for me. I mean, I think the last intervention replied to the first intervention. There is a provision, there are provisions in GDPR which say that people need to be informed when their personal data are being automatically processed. So first, that's the first thing. I mean, you need to know that there is a machine that is processing your personal data. And secondly, you have a possibility to opt out. So you should have the possibility to tell Netflix or whoever processes your personal data to provide you with a service that you don't want to take advantage of that service. So we will have to see how we implement that, but the point is covered there. And I think this is the starting point of the whole reflection on transparency of algorithm. And we are only at the beginning of this reflection. And this links to the issue of control, making sure that at the end there is a human decision for important aspects. And that was said by several. Vincent said it. Several of the trade union colleagues said it. So this is a very important aspect. We will see how we can enforce that. Now, and that's a very important aspect of trust. If you are not able to tell people that it's not the machine who is going to take the decision, but it's going to be a human who is accountable, then you will be in trouble. On the time it takes, yes, it will take time. I mean, yes, you cannot reform the education system very quickly. You cannot change the legal framework quickly either. So this definitely will take time. We will see if there is an urgency. We can always intervene. But what I see, and that's also true inside the European Commission, is that, you know, in the past we were a bit seen like the geeks in my DG. So my DG is dealing with digital issues. We were seen a bit like the geeks, and all they tell us about artificial intelligence and all these things, and it's not really, they are a bit crazy, it's not really important. Now we are really at the center of the game. So you will see in the next budget of the European Union, digital skills will be very high on the agenda. But then the implementation will definitely take some time.
So we have two questions here.
Thanks. Did anybody else want to comment on these two initial questions from the panel? Clara?
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to go back to the question of trust. And I absolutely agree that we need to explain more and show that the humans are always the ones that are controlling. They're the one designing it, and they're the one that are fixing the objective. They're the one who are using the data to build upon the machine learning. They're always in control. I also believe that we have to be very careful in all the first big and very visible application of AI that we're making, because we still have to prove that it is an efficient technology and that it can really impact society in a positive way. And if we get it wrong from the start, people will immediately mistrust it. And I want to come back to a point that was made earlier on why are we calling it AI? I think it was a great point. Is it really an intelligence? It's only a way of processing data. Actually, artificial intelligence is machine learning, and changing the vocabulary is not simply an artifact. I think it would rather show what the reality behind it is.
Thank you, excellent point. And Annette, you wanted to comment as well? Please.
I would like to point out that we already have the problems that humans are not really in control. Humans, for example, let's take a really easy example. The customs in the Hamburg, where they check the ships if there is some illegal stuff there. There's an automated program, and those people who have a lot of experience how to check these ships, now they just sit in front of the computer and they get an order, you have to go there, you have to go there. If they think it's wrong, they can say, oh, I think it's wrong, but then it takes them 2 hours to oppose, and then they are asked why they opposed, and if there is a mistake, the algorithm is always the measurement. So they are in real trouble to argue what they think is important. And this is a point where they actually still do have the chance to say something, but they have no possibility to integrate their knowledge in shaping the algorithm. They can just follow the orders. And I think this problem will increase every day by implementing more and more of these algorithms. So we have to find ways to not only explain, but also to integrate those people who work with those algorithms, that they also can help shape them.
Very good, thank you very much. Raul and then Patrick.
I am Raul Echeverria from Internet Society, but speaking on my own behalf. Thank you for this very interesting debate. So one thing is about transparency and algorithms. I'm afraid that if we think in 10 years from now, we will not be able to regulate the decision making of many of those things that are based on artificial intelligence, because the equipment or software applications or whatever will be learning about their own experience. And so it will be very difficult to act or before the decisions are taken, because the decisions will be taken on the fly. This makes much more relevant the transparency of the algorithms. And it is a big change in the paradigm, because when somebody produces a good wine today, for example, they make public the grapes they are using, the percentage, the alcohol in the wine, or some other things, and they are ensuring that they are working based on some standards in terms of health, but they are not telling all the secrets, because there is a part of the product that is a secret for the manufacturer or for the producer or for who provide the services. In the future, this is a big change in the paradigm, because in the near future, very near future, they will have to share the secrets of what they produce, because the decisions that the artificial intelligence-based products or services will take will affect our life. Somebody mentioned medicine-related examples. So if a machine will take a decision in a surgery, it will be very difficult to act before the decisions are taken, because probably that software application or machine will take 100 decisions during the surgery. So what I want to know in advance, I want to know how those decisions will be taken, not what the decisions are. So I want to be sure that decisions will be taken based on best practices, on advanced knowledge. This is what will allow me to take the risk of doing the surgery. So transparency of algorithms is very important. It's a big change in the paradigms of how things are done. Second comment, and sorry for the long intervention, but it's with regard to and I was talking to my colleague from Romania yesterday about this, and we talk many times about the skills that are needed. And we repeat that we need to develop the new skills, but we don't talk about what the skills are. And to be honest, I don't know what the skills are. What are the skills that people will need in 10 years? But what I can say is what are the needs that people need now. And this, I think that we need to do two things. One is to train people on computational thinking, but not only at the high school or high school level. It's also the workers. We need to train the workers on computational thinking, because in 2-3 years, people that is working with a machine will have to work with an absolutely different device. And they will have to understand how the devices work and how the devices think in order to be able to interact with them. This is urgent. And the second thing is we need to call we need to make a call to all governments, states around the world to urgently review their education systems and for taking in consideration those things. I know that it will take many years, but as soon as we start, as soon as we will have some results. Sorry for the long intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Raul, for your thoughts. Yes, so let's take a few questions here. I think.
Okay, yeah. I think when we speak about artificial intelligence, I think our imagination starts flowing, yeah. And at the same time, we're not really very clear about the facts. Anyone knows how many postings Facebook has taken down in the last quarter? Well, it's in their transparency report. 860 million postings have been taken down in a 3-month period. I can ask Google how many videos have been taken down in the last quarter on YouTube, and how much of that has been done through artificial intelligence or through algorithms or self-learning algorithms. Facebook claims that 99% of terrorist propaganda has been taken down before any viewing of any posting on this matter has taken place, and all of this has been done through artificial intelligence. So we're talking about what is already currently happening right now, what is human intervention and what is no human intervention. Out of these 860 million postings, there's very little human intervention involved, and righteously so, because we have machines that can do it for us. I wanted to react to the psychological aspect of it. Can you imagine looking at violent content for workers throughout the days? There's been strong criticism about exposing workers to many of the contents that has been produced and posted. So we really have to balance workers' rights and know what it brings for the workers and what is maybe less positive for them. So algorithms are there, self-learning algorithms are there. The trust we need to work on, but I'm not so sure that our internet service providers, companies, will let us look into how algorithms are fabricated. It's the same thing like asking Coca-Cola to reveal the secret formula of Coca-Cola. I'm sorry, algorithms are the core of the business. That's the core of the business model. And what we have to ensure, and some have already said that, we have to involve from the start within the design the human rights dimension of what we're developing. We need not to be able to guide every single step that is being done within artificial intelligence, but we need to set the human boundaries of where we want to go. When we developed cloning possibilities, we didn't say stop all the cloning. We said there is a limit, and that limit is human cloning. So within the development of artificial intelligence, self-learning machines, I'm not so sure that garbage in means garbage out, or intelligent input means intelligent input out. Not necessarily. What we don't know is we put in, we don't know what comes out. And there, I think we have to set somehow the boundaries, which are, of course, ethical and philosophical, but also legal.
Thank you very much. So we are officially out of time, but we have a couple of final comments here before we hand over to our rapporteur.
So coming back to the video, Annette's video, I think she raised really important topic. The key term that is massively overlooked in the discussion about artificial intelligence is the topic and the key term of self-determinancy, and how much actually people need to make small and bigger choices in their life. How much do they need to feel that they are in control of their lives? And this is what actually makes them happy at the end of the day. So this is the comment about Annette's video. And another point to Clara. She has mentioned that Google engineers have trainings on fairness. I think it's a really disturbing phrase, training on fairness, because fairness is not a washing machine that you can operate. I mean, what kind of version of fairness are they taught? Is it an utilitarian version or egalitarian version? Do they read John Rawls or maybe Robert Nozick? I mean, what kind of textbook they have? Yeah, this is a very specific question.
Any further comments?
Remote.
Remote, thank you.
So we have a question from Amalie de Silva Mitchell. Will AI become a big brother, referencing George Orwell's book 1984? And are we prepared to limit AI development in 2024? And also, it just came through from Avri Doria. Agree that it is good that artificial experts are reviewing the content for certain harmful types. But once designed with human rights considerations taken into account, we also need to be able to test these systems against human rights situations, and we need to provide appeal mechanisms for those things removed. Also, I think that Annette wants to say something.
Yes, I know that Annette has a final comment. We are really out of time here, Annette, but if you can keep it to 1 minute, I will give you the floor for the last time, as you are remote and in a disadvantage. Please, Annette, go ahead. We can't hear you, Annette.
You cannot hear?
Yes. Now we hear you. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so in respect to skills, I think we should address not only workers, but also managers, politicians, executives, that they understand the interdisciplinarity of this issue. I think this is extremely important. Second, someone said algorithms are the core of the business model and therefore they cannot be transparent. I think this should not be true for public service. This should not be true for necessary services for humankind. I think we have to clarify this and make a distinction between public and private interest. And yes, I just think I would like to say hello to the psychology lady and say that the whole issue of self-determination and the possibility of thinking and acting with her and his own will is really essential. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure our psychology lady says hi back. So thank you very much. We're going to wrap up the session now. Yes. We have Sue Sonia, who's been listening very intently and who will propose the bullet points to finish the session with. Thank you.
Since we're out of time and this is how it's usually done, it's not a debate, but if you disagree with any of the comments read, please raise your hand. AI must be accountable, transparent, modifiable. Privacy and determinability by design is a must. Unintended and unexpected consequences in development of AI and robotics are unavoidable. There must be an ethical code for algorithm developers. The education system needs to be revamped to prepare future workers with necessary skills to deal with new forms of jobs that AI will bring. Interdisciplinary teams are needed to relieve the burden on engineers, and engineers need to be educated on ethics. AI technology needs a common international framework. Ethical clearance is not sufficient. I'm just an engineer is not an excuse when developing AI. AI is or will become a race. Expecting adherence to ethical code by developers is not realistic. Is anyone listening?
We're listening.
We need a kill switch for automated systems. AI can be part of the solution to the problem of future of work. And I think, yes, that's it. Thank you.
Do we have any comments or objections? I think it sounds fair. No hands, no objections. I'd like to thank our panelists and Rinalia for organizing single-handedly, more or less, such a great session, and also for the audience who stayed here for the whole 1 hour and a half. So very interesting topic. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. So thank you for staying till the end. I just wanted to say that it was a pleasure to organize this workshop because I had an excellent team of collaborators, and I want to make a special mention for Malgorzata Peck from the Council of Europe, for Marit from the Internet Society, and Amala Di Silva Mitchell, who is participating online. They've been a great help to me. I've also asked the role players to stay a little bit longer in the room because you didn't really have a lot of time to engage them. So if you have specific questions and want to talk to them personally, they would be happy to be here to meet you. Thank you so much.